You are about to see the highlights of Detroit's winning presentation given this spring in the city in pursuit of the 1968 Olympic Games. This record consists of a selection of approximately half of Detroit's presentation. The voices you hear are addressing the United States Olympic Committee. At this meeting, Detroit was selected to be the host city to represent the United States in the international competition, which determines the site of the Games in 1968. The Detroit story before. Most of you have heard it once. Today, we're going to introduce you to a Detroit you've never met before. A Detroit whose boundaries lie far beyond the southeastern corner of Michigan. Is Detroit, USA. A Detroit whose citizenry includes tens of millions of Americans. A Detroit whose riches, resources, and productive energies total far more than any community that has ever hosted an Olympiad. If we were to design a special flag to symbolize the capability of Detroit, USA to host the 1968 Olympics, we might take as our inspiration 5 interlocking circles denoting international brotherhood. Our Detroit flag might be composed of intermeshing gear wheels. We would label one, talent, another, experience, another, resources, still another, responsibility, and the last, enthusiasm. 2 of the foremost leaders of Detroit, USA are here to tell you how we plan to build these qualities into the most effective piece of community effort machinery the world has ever seen. What do these 5 gears add up to? The ancient Greeks had a word for it: dynamic. This single word sums up better than any other what Detroit can mean to America and to the world in 1968. If you've heard the word dynamic used in the same breath with Detroit, no accident of alliteration. For dynamics is exactly what we have in greater supply in Detroit, USA than anywhere else in the world. Detroit has set these wheels in motion many times before to get big jobs done with unqualified success. From this record comes confidence in our ability to win the Olympic Games for America in 1968. As we reveal the story of these 5 intermeshing gear wheels, you'll see that the only dirt on the face of Detroit, say, is the dust kicked up by dedicated men when they roll up their sleeves to do a job and do it well. We've made up our Italian, Scandinavian, Polish, Irish, Canadian, American mind about this, and the record proves that no other region of the world's economy and no other assemblage of world's leadership can do a better job on the 1968 Olympiad than Detroit, USA.
I'm Jerome P. Cavanaugh, Mayor of Detroit. It's a great pleasure to be here today before the United States Olympic Committee. Today we're going to show you from every vantage point the Detroit you've never met. The great sports enthusiasm of Detroit's citizens and their neighbors is apparent in many splendid facilities presently available for all types of sporting events, and all are actually within 10 miles of the city center, the Olympic Village and the Olympic Stadium site. Now let's take a look at some of the existing and some of the brand new facilities within this 10-mile radius. The proposed stadium site, the focal point of the Olympic Games, will fulfill all technical specifications required for Olympic events and ceremonies. It will have a seating capacity of 110,000. Parking facilities for 20,000 vehicles are provided. Various other buildings on the site include the present Coliseum Arena and the administrative building. Close by will be the brand new velodrome for cycling events with a 1-mile banked track. Its permanent seating capacity is 4,000, But for the Olympic events, this will be expanded to a capacity for 10,000 spectators. And typical of these more than modern facilities at the stadium complex is the possibility of this proposed monorail planned to serve the stadium directly. 10 minutes away is the University of Detroit Fieldhouse. The 9,000-seat Memorial Building Arena is ideal for many indoor activities. The U of D Stadium, seating 21,000, is equipped for day or night events. Another excellent facility is our 16,000-seat Olympia Stadium, the home of Detroit's hockey activities, superbly equipped and centrally located. It is ideal for such indoor events as gymnastics, boxing, wrestling, and basketball. Broadhead Armory, with a seating capacity of 4,000, is a well-equipped modern athletic plant, specially suited for fencing and weightlifting. In addition, the Light Guard Armory offers 32,000 square feet of floor space. Detroit is ideally located for aquatic events. Here is the proposed expansion and redevelopment of our Brennan Pool facilities, one of the finest Olympic-sized swimming and diving pools in America. The Detroit River, sheltered between the city and the Canadian shorelines, provides splendid water facilities for all boating and yachting events, with plenty of room for spectators on both banks. Belle Isle is a unique 1,000-acre park that abounds in spacious athletic fields, an ideal road system for cycling, and ample parking. Here, too, will be the world's first and finest artificial rowing course, 1 1/4 miles long, 300 feet wide, designed to meet every Olympic requirement. There will be no other course like it in the world. The University Village complex, now in the advanced planning stage, will house both participants and guests on a 304-acre site, which is part of the Wayne State University campus. It will be known as Olympic Village during the course of the Games. Temporary residents will dine in modern, efficient dining rooms. After dinner, they may shop or enjoy a wide choice of recreational facilities. Olympic Village is now being planned for both permanent student and faculty housing. By the summer of 1968, it will be the most modern and well-serviced facility of its kind anywhere in the world. This is typical of Detroit's concern for the housing and hosting of not only participants and guests, but the tremendous influx of ethnic groups that will find the many, many homes of Detroit's own ethnic groups waiting for them with the open door of hospitality. Detroit's new Civic Center is recognized the world over as one of the largest and finest. The convention hall and exhibits building includes a floor area of over 400,000 square feet. The arena-type auditorium seats 12,000 people. All of these facilities, as well as those for archery, shooting, and equestrian activity, are already in existence or in the very advanced stages. An absolute assurance can be given that to the extent not presently available, these facilities can and will be provided. People coming to the Games here in America's heartland will find plenty of places to stay. 45,000 comfortable motel and hotel rooms are within 1 hour's drive. Now I want to establish firmly the financial responsibility and capacity of Detroit, USA, to make the 1968 Olympics an outstanding success. First, let's look at the fiscal soundness of Detroit, as demonstrated by the budget for 1962-63, a budget well over $350 million. We're proud to say that this budget has been balanced realistically and is based on conservative estimates of revenue from all sources. Detroit has never been so financially healthy. As for industrial worth, the true industrial value of the 6-county area we call metropolitan Detroit is reckoned in the billions. Especially dramatic is the city of Detroit's municipal development. Since 1952 and planned for by 1967, Detroit's taxpayers have put well over $1.25 billion in capital improvements. As for commerce, Detroit, because of the St. Lawrence Seaway, now handles a greater number of imports and exports than any other port of entry in the entire United States except New York City. Retail sales in metropolitan Detroit total over $5 billion. Today, Detroit produces more wealth per capita than any other city in the United States. 71% of Detroiters own their own homes, a record among the nation's population centers. We are a fiscally stable, Olympic-minded community. I believe that we have convincingly portrayed our ability, our facilities, and our determination. The basic purpose, as we understand it, in staging an Olympiad is to light the Olympic torch in all parts of the world. We have graphically demonstrated that Detroit, our city, is centrally located for over 90 million people in the United States. Everyone in our area supports the Olympic bid. The service clubs, the high schools, the college students, the leadership and membership of the great international labor unions that are headquartered in our city, businessmen, educators, city councils in Michigan and surrounding areas, mayors in most of the major Midwestern cities. What I'm saying, in effect, is that the men, women, the children of all the races and all the diverse national origin groups have voiced their support for Detroit's efforts. Now let's get down to our program for financing the 1968 Olympic Games. Most of the facilities, as mentioned earlier, are already in existence. I might add, standing and paid for. We are concerned here with the financing and construction of two major projects. First, Olympic Village. The city of Detroit, along with Wayne State University, is already committed to the fulfillment of this city within a city, which will be a dynamic part of the Wayne State University campus. Second, the new stadium. In Detroit's quest for the 1968 Olympics, the Michigan legislature has established a public authority to finance and operate this stadium. And now to tell you about this legislation, it gives me great pleasure to present the Honorable George Romney, Governor of the state of Michigan. Governor?
Thank you, Mayor Kavanaugh. Our state legislature has taken almost unanimous action. It's passed three measures. First is Act number 1218, creating a state recreation and building authority to issue bonds and build the stadium. Second, while we only need $1,360,000 to pay the principal and interest on this stadium, the second act, number 1219, provides $1,600,000 of additional revenue annually. It might surprise some of you to know that this year Michigan will have a surplus of $34 million, and we'll have a surplus next year. The stadium bonds will be paid for from the state's general revenue. Third, the legislature, by concurrent resolution, has created a joint House-Senate committee to make sure that the legislature does the additional necessary things to bring the Olympiad to Detroit. These actions show that Michigan means business. When the question was raised about Detroit's ability to finance the games, the whole state rallied spontaneously to support this financing program. I know of no major legislation that has ever gone through the Michigan legislature as rapidly as this. And this is so that we could present a firm and adequate program, so that we can be sure that the 1968 Olympiad will be held not in a 1932 model stadium, but in a 1968 model. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Governor Romney. The joint efforts of Detroit and Michigan provide a double assurance of the financial ability and stability of Detroit, USA, to put on the finest celebration of any city in the world.
The Olympic Games. Hosting an event of the sheer physical scope of the Olympics is a big job for any city. An enormous job, requiring not only proper facilities and financing, but also firm resolve on the part of the entire community. A can-do resolve, rooted in a can-do record of comparable achievement. Before a city can properly host and handle the Olympic Games, it must understand fully what those games are, and always have been, and always must be, if the basic ideal of the Olympiad is to be properly preserved and presented. The Olympics are far more than a major athletic event. It is vitally important to perpetuate the ageless ideal behind the Games and the larger role they play in kindling the flame of international peace. Detroit, USA fully understands what it is asking to do. Detroit knows that it is asking to take on a sacred trust, one that transcends logistical considerations that reach into every resource of the city, important as those practical considerations are. Detroit, USA has the people who know the importance of following through, just as we have always followed through in time of world, national, and community need. We are proud of our record of getting big jobs, seemingly undoable jobs, done. It's a record unsurpassed by any city anywhere in the world. But not surprising when you consider that Detroit pools one of the world's greatest reservoirs of organizational talent, the kind of men the country and the community have called on before to move mountains, and who ask only, where would you like them moved and by when? These men are attracted to Detroit by the unique demands of America's #1 industry, the pivot point of the nation's economy. The kind of men who like nothing better than being told something can't be done because they've never done it before. For example, it was said that no city could ever coordinate its various charitable fundraising efforts into a single unified drive and realize anywhere near the money needed. Detroit did it and is still doing it. Detroit's United Foundation Torch Drive has raised more money for charity than any city in the world. $20 million last year alone. More important, Detroit has surpassed its goal every year without a single year's exception for 14 consecutive years. An unparalleled example of follow-through on every level of Detroit's civic and business life. Remember 1945, when the big job was to get the national economy back on course? There were dire predictions from every quarter that Detroit couldn't reconvert its assembly lines to peacetime needs and peacetime production almost overnight to get the country back on the road. Detroit did that too, gaining a reputation for its ability to shift its gears under the press of deadline and the pressure of need. We remember the time when it was said that Detroit, because of its preoccupation with building cars, could never become a culture center. Detroit has not only attracted as residents celebrated sculptors and artists, internationally famous architects, writers, and musicians, it has become a showplace for their works. Detroit has attracted the arts at large. In the world's most beautiful theater, the brand new Fisher, many of the season's biggest hits fill this auditorium to capacity prior to opening in New York. The beautiful, acoustically perfect Ford Auditorium is the home of the world-famous Detroit Symphony Orchestra. And Detroit is host to and supports the Metropolitan Opera, a cultural high point which some said Detroiters would never attend. Big jobs. In 1960, Detroit got 1,400,000 people to come and look at its cars by hosting the most successful national automobile show in history. Can Detroit, USA do all that needs to be done by 1968 in order to ready itself fully for the Olympic Games? Already, the big job is in the hands of the people. 322 ranking members of the Detroit community are hard at work as a committee and underway to get the big job done. Aroused Detroiters everywhere are making their voices heard, sending in petitions by the thousands upon thousands, pledging their support. As a group and as individuals, Detroit citizens with their flair for organization are rolling up their sleeves. Picking up the job of telling the Detroit story are men like Mr. John F. Gordon, President of General Motors Corporation, Mr. Henry Ford II, Chairman of the Board, Ford Motor Company, Mr. Lynn Townsend, President Chrysler Corporation, and Mr. Richard Cross, Chairman of the Board, American Motors Corporation.
Great strength has been added to Detroit's bid by the able and responsible leadership demonstrated by our governor. who by rallying bipartisan support affirmed the spirit of community cohesion that exists between Detroit and Michigan. Now I'd like to ask Governor Romney to conclude our presentation.
You know, a champion must not only have the ability to win, but the will to win. And certainly the city that is host of the Olympics must have the same two things. Detroit has demonstrated beyond doubt that it has the resources and facilities. We're in shape to move, but let me emphasize that we have much more to offer than physical facilities. Detroit's the city of champions. The whole world knows that Detroit is the American city whose products have revolutionized our way of living. And only in Michigan will you find the men and women whose talent made us the arsenal of democracy in wartime and the economic pace setter in peacetime. We not only have a firm program to finance the finest Olympics anywhere and the talent to organize them, but we also have the united will to do so. Our will to win has made us champions. We've proved by actions and not words that Michigan and Detroit are responsible and resourceful and are entitled to the designation we received last fall. We've rallied as never before in recent history. We have the tools, we have the spirit, we have the people to do the job in keeping with the classic tradition of the Olympiad. Your committee is meeting here today because it has been claimed that Michigan and Detroit are financially unable to carry on a successful Olympiad, that we can't make good on our promises, that we are unworthy of your faith and trust in originally designating Detroit. The issue of reconsideration faces you with a decision just as vital to us as the question of whether or not Detroit shall be the United States site for the Olympiad. It also has a moral and ethical aspect. You were asked to reconsider your decision on the grounds that we are not financially or otherwise able to put on the Olympic Games, that our plans are only paper plans, that we either don't intend or are not able to do what we have said we will do. In other words, it's not now a simple question of whether Detroit should be selected as a site. It's also a question of whether Detroit is capable of being a site. The meeting here today is not because some other site has come forward to claim that it could do a better job than Detroit and Michigan in putting on the Olympics, but rather because it was claimed that Detroit and Michigan were not worthy to be considered. I'm sure you'll agree that this is an unsportsmanlike attack. I believe you can see that if for some reason your Olympic committee now withdraws your support, it would give Detroit and Michigan and the people and officials who have rallied to retain what was awarded them last fall an undeserved black eye. It would substitute poor sportsmanship for the fairness and honor that is the essence of the Olympics. It would confirm the attacks that have been made. It would injure us irreparably. Gentlemen, to the people of Detroit, of Michigan, of the Midwest, and of the people of the nation and the world who know and respect the spirit of the Olympiad, you owe your continued support of Detroit as the United States 1968 designee. I solemnly assure you that we will not fail you in any way and that we will surprise you with our outstanding handling of the games. On the basis of our integrity and welfare as a state, I beseech you to stand by your earlier decision and reject its reconsideration. Thank you very much.
You have just seen highlights of the Detroit Olympic presentation made before the United States Olympic Committee in New York. This presentation played a major part in winning for Detroit the right to be the host city for the United States when it goes before the International Olympic Committee in October.